Councillors, it's the appointed time, so welcome to the April meeting of council. Welcome to Ms Mullen in the acting CEO's role. I can assure you there's a lot of turbulence on the lake at the moment because Martin's been pretty busy with his jet ski, but we've kept right away from him, so well done. First and foremost, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout the Barossa region and recognise their continued connection to land, waters and culture, and pay respect to their elders past, present. There is no leave of absence, there's no apologies. We'll move to the minutes of the previous meeting for confirmation, and they were the minutes from the Tuesday, the 15th of March, 2022. So would someone move those minutes be adopted? Councillor De Vries, you'll move the minutes?
Yes, I will. I'd like to, believe it or not, speak to them too once there's a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a seconder? Seconder, Councillor Angus.
Yeah, I don't have any real issue with the minutes as such, but this seems like the only opportune moment to say it. That I'm just going to suggest that this council adopts a policy that when we have an Easter weekend leading up to a council meeting, that perhaps the agenda be circulated an additional 2 days earlier. Because I don't know about the rest of you, but I found it was impossible to talk to the staff, and with Martin being away as well, it didn't make it easier. And of course, so if you hadn't read the agenda and digested it all by maybe midday Thursday, you had no opportunity to reach out during the Friday, Saturday, Sunday and Monday. So I just thought maybe we could put some sort of formal policy together into the future about that we actually add an extra 2 days on those rare occasions where the third Tuesday lines up with Easter.
Yep, no, fine, that's fine. Yep, thank you. Any other comments with regard to the minutes? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Members, on page 5, 1.7.1, we have a petition sealing of the Goldfields Road, Cockatoo Valley. There's a recommendation that the council receive and note the petition. Councillor Wee-Smith.
Motion.
And seconded Councillor De Vries. Either one wish to speak to it?
Just to note that, of course we have committed to the first stage of sealing Goldfields Road, but that the residents are very much keen to see the second half done, so there's a lot of work to be done in that area, as I'm sure the Mayor is aware of.
Yep. Councillor De Vries?
I'd do it tomorrow if we could. I think it's a really important road and it opens up huge tourism opportunities, and you and I have discussed this before many times, so yeah, bring it on.
Thank you. Any other comment? All those in favour? Carried. There's no deputations. 1.9.1, the Financial Assistance Eden Valley Creative Industry Centre on page 13. That's the notice of motion from Councillor Haybick. You wish to?
Mayor, I'd like to just speak to that first before I move to.
Okay.
I must say that 10 plus years ago, council then made a very fine decision in what they did to help this community out. They have reconstructed just about the whole church. All the windows have been done and brought it back to somewhere where it's.
What I just rather than you speak to it, I probably need you to move the motion, or if the council wishes to just.
Well, I'm getting around to that.
Yeah.
Well, there's been a bit of talk since I put the motion up.
I'm sorry, councillor, I need to have a movement in a second of that.
I'll move the motion at this stage.
As it sits,
As it
yes.
sits.
And second it. Now, councillor, thank you.
So going on from there, a lot of money has been spent on the building. And over the years, they've reconstructed it back to nearly its original state. And over those years, they've always run into trouble with insurance. Because you'll see in the report, the insurance cost has gone threefold or more than that over the 10 years. And now the building's uninsured. The people who work there are insured. but the building itself not insured. So we own, as a council, we own 90% of the value of that place. And I think that it's about time we come to some conclusion to help this small town out. They're a very strong-spirited group of people, and they need some assistance. So they need it now, and it needs to be, to my way of thinking, ongoing. Now, last year they were given $1,000 by council to help them out with insurance. So that just got them over the line with insurance. But now it's come back and it's the same. So the insurance for the building and the people who work there is about $1,800 a year. And they've paid out for the people, for the workers, but they're still shy of about $900 and something. So if we give them a donation this year, we've got to work out, I think, what we're going to do for the following years. Because it's all to do with arts and crafts, a small town. I would think as a council, we want to see it keep on going. The value of the building is $144,000 or $145,000. Now that's not quite the value. The actual value would be a lot more than that. That's only for the value general. So the money that's been spent on the building is a lot more. And so if it was sold, and I'm not saying it will be sold, but when it is sold, it's going to be a lot more than $145,000. So that gives this council a lot of money. That's probably the council of the day, when they come up with this idea to help them out, weren't aware that it was going to increase in value to the degree it has. So I'm putting it to council that we support this group in one way or the other. Either as I put it up, we bury the motion, but they do need some support, and so do we, because, as I said before, the building's currently not insured. So, as we know, if it burnt down, we'd get 90% of nothing, virtually. So that's where we're at. So, whatever we decide on, I think that we should be deciding on something that's maybe not just for 1 year, but a few years hence. And I know we put in there that I put in there to have their books audited, and money only be forwarded to, not forwarded, but given to them to help them out on the basis that they run at a loss, which they're doing. So whether we need to get the books audited, I think it is a bit strong. They are very, you can see the bookwork that's already come in the report. They document everything, and it's all straight down the line from a very small community group. So that's where I'm coming from, and I'd like to see us do something about keeping the show going at Eden Valley. Very important for a small town, like Midtown, like they are.
Thank you, Councillor Hearn.
Yeah, I mean, Councillor Havig has said it all, and I totally agree. They've got the Lillicraps and that community have done a really sterling job in that church, or was a church, and I think we should support them in some form if we can.
I might just ask Ms McGann, we have other similar requests because we have, from memory, we've got other buildings that's owned by the local community, and I know in the past we've tried to support. Have we got other similar requests that might be ending?
Certainly, through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor Barrett has also spoken to the Springton Progress Association, and they'll be seeking some support from council in the near future. Similar issues in relation to insurance and their capacity to pay, particularly over the last 2 years. Theirs is quite isolated to the last 2 years, with COVID has prevented their usual sort of income streams, and so they will be seeking support from council to pay insurance, or to help them cover their insurance costs.
One thing I did forget, Mayor, if I may, I think we insure the big organ in the art gallery.
We own it.
Yeah, but we
insure
insure. Yeah, but we insure the.
I don't think that's relevant, Councillor. We own it, so we'd want to insure it.
It's an additional thing that was put in the gallery, though.
Yeah, but we own it. That's the difference. Okay, So we'll have the move and second, councillor Boothby, yes.
I was going to potentially suggest an amendment to the motion. Would now be the right time to potentially do that?
Yes,
So if an amended motion could be to provide some financial support, say a nominal sum of say $2,000, to help them through the next 12 months in terms of insurance, for that building. I'll get the wording right in a minute. With the idea of basically connecting them up with RDA Barossa and our internal community development team. So creative industries is now in our economic development plan and in our community development conversation we're having today, to actually then help them come up with a way forward in terms of their ongoing financial sustainability. So if I amend the motion, I'll put that forward, sorry, I'll do that now. That we provide financial support of $2,000 as a one-off sum, and just work with them and RDA Barossa in the next 12 months to review their financial sustainability and ongoing operations, something to that effect.
hang on a sec.
With RDA. To review on this.
Apologies for not having done that before the meeting.
Let me just get it up on the screen.
Just get it up on the screen and get a seconder, then we'll carry on the
I think
debate
I'm-
from there.
Willing to second that.
You're willing to second it, okay.
So I can speak to that while they're doing that
Yep.
if you want. So I guess my concern around just having a straight 5 years, here's some money, it's not necessarily having that next progression of how can we work with them to actually get a different outcome. My concern is some of the precedent we have had, which is a different situation, but the Mount Pleasant Golf Club, we had 15 years or something of ongoing, council staff invested in having to work with them ongoing, constantly having to look at their finances. I don't like the sort of big brother over the top approach in terms of having to get their audited financial statements and creating more work for them. Long story short, hugely supportive of what they want to do, why they exist. We haven't had a massive investment in Eden Valley in terms of our services. I think it's really well warranted to actually invest some time and money in that. I just think having a potentially more, proactive, shorter term period of support to help them access existing resources to have those conversations may be potentially a better outcome than just giving them some cash and having and then coming back in 5 years' time to have the same conversation. I'm also aware that there are a lot of community groups, whether they own a building or not, who do great work, who are probably suffering from insurance-itis, and those costs are continuing to go up. It just gets harder and harder for groups like this to be able to sustain public liability insurance that they need just to exist. So I think that we have to be conscious of how we are able to help ongoing, because this is not the only group to have that challenge, but this might be a way of having some outcomes against our economic development strategy and our community development strategy in a creative industries area in a different way.
Thank you, councillor Breeze.
Yeah, I think this is a good option. Councillor Haybick, I really liked where you were going with this. I think that they do need support. I actually am very passionate about this building for one very selfish reason. I opened it. I was actually acting mayor. I wore the chains, and that was literally two member for Schubert's ago, because Ivan Venning was there alongside. It's a terrific venue. I don't know, has everybody actually been there and seen it?
I used to preach in it.
There you go. It's a fantastic venue. It does great work. What I really like about the residents of Eden Valley is that they're a very proud group who take their independence really to heart, and in fact they do not want our help, for example, with their own institute. They like the independence of this. And the only concern that I had with your motion, Councillor Haybick, was that I actually thought that it did two things which I was a little bit concerned about. One was that I would have preferred to have just seen it as a flat, consistent payment so that they knew exactly what they were looking at each year. This idea of a floating possible 1,000, possible less thing, I would have just said, let's just do what they asked for, give them the money for the insurance, and I'd have made it ongoing rather than for 5 years. Why stop in 5? If it's a problem, it's a problem. Eden Valley doesn't get a lot of support, and I think this would have been a very good way to go. And I would actually argue that I like the idea of giving them 2,000 now. That actually gets them ahead of the game. I'd like to see this council workshop this and maybe look at locking in even before the end of this term that we give them the insurance going forward. That way they can budget. They don't have to worry about, because otherwise you get the situation where if they earn an extra 1,000, we just say, well, then we won't give you the $1,000. And I don't think that sort of de-incentivises people to sort of help themselves as well. And the other problem is it requires us, if we're going to do that, to then have oversight. If they just send us the bill and we pay it, then there's no need for oversight. But if we have to be auditing them every year, we're doing the very thing which I know the people of Eden Valley would hate, which is then we're looking over their shoulder, and I don't like that either. So I agree with the principle of what you were trying to do, but I think there were a couple of stings in the tail. I think this amendment can resolve that. And so I don't think it needs to be put in the wording here, but I think that, I would like the word to get back to that community, that as well as doing this, we will endeavour between now and the rest of this year to lock in so that they don't have to worry about the insurance going forward. So they can get on with the business of doing what they're doing, which is terrific. They do need to be supported. And I think given that we do own a big chunk of the building, Your Worship, then maybe the parallel isn't exact, but maybe Councillor Hearn has a point that we should at least pay some of it, and why not all, given that we own 90%. So I hope everybody supports this motion, and I applaud you, Councillor Boothby, for putting it forward.
Yeah. I'm sure the people of Eden Valley would support that motion.
Okay, yeah. So we have an amendment. Anyone wish to speak any further? Yeah.
I've got a question.
Yep.
I'm just seeking clarification. You stated earlier, after Councillor Hearn raised the issue of the ownership of the organ, can that be clarified? My understanding, we don't own the organ. I looked at our assets and I haven't seen it on any of our books as an asset.
Well, I stand corrected then.
I
thought we owned it, but we don't own it.
No,
Because that's a very
My apologies, Councillor Hearn.
That's right, Mayor, accepted.
Because the reason I raise it is insuring something we don't own and then insuring something we've got a 90% vested interest in. And that is a very important point. And that's why I was seeking clarification on that.
Fair enough, good pickup. I thought we owned it, but
No, I don't think so.
Who does own it? Who does own it then?
Well, there's a group that bought it out.
yeah,
Can yield to Australia.
Okay.
So, maybe,
sorry, I sort of,
no worries.
I'm not gonna apologise again, so that's enough.
Can we have that in the minutes?
Councillor Angus, then Councillor Schilling.
Mayor, I have some concerns about the wording of that motion, of that amendment. I'm totally supportive of the intention, let me make that quite clear. We are providing a one-off sum. Now, we're going to have to either rescind that if we change it or
Yeah, fair point.
do something. And we're going to review their ongoing sustainability. Now, that raises another query, because if they're not, are we judging them for that? Because they may not be sustainable, but they will volunteer their time and effort to continue doing what they're doing. I don't want to see them disadvantaged. I think our responsibility is to make sure that building is insured adequately and that they as a group are supported. So I don't want to
What if we change the word
create
review to
a trap
assist?
for ourselves, that's all.
Yeah, we could change, so we could take out one-off, so for us, financial assistance, of a sum of $2,000. And the last part, could just basically be, to review their ongoing operations.
Just pay the building insurance.
Well, if we put to assist their ongoing sustainability, then that sort
Why
of
don't we
also
just do
infers that we
yearly?
will.
Yeah, okay, that
Why
can
don't we
work
just
as
pay
well.
their insurance?
Why don't we
building
just do it
insurance?
now and make a decision? Why review? I agree with Councillor, it's getting messy. Why don't we just do it for $2,000 or the cost of the insurance?
Look, I'm going back to the mover, rather than us have a go around the table here trying to amend it on the run. And then we can deal with the amendment.
can we,
And while you just contemplate that, I'm gonna withdraw my apology now, councillor Hearn, because we do own the organ and it's on our assets schedule, so I thought I was incorrect, but I think
I'll just bring it on over.
Thank you for the clarification.
thanks for raising it, I had vague recollection that you owned it.
I'll buy you a coffee afterwards.
Okay, thank you, alright. Let's stay with the issue at the moment,
Can we-
the assets, the amendment.
Just,
So with the mover and the seconders agreement, you've sort of
Yeah,
amended
so
it.
if we take out the words one off, that will address that concern. Can we just pay the building?
an annual sum,
I guess I don't wanna speak to it again, otherwise I'll close the debate. Am I able to speak to it again without closing the debate? If we're amending the motion?
Yeah, I think for clarification, I'll allow that, yes, yep.
So basically so I like the idea of connecting this into our creative industries conversation. And the hub and spoke model, talking, you know, so this can be a spoke, whether we own the building or not, it can be a spoke. So to me, I'm just keen to connect it into that conversation about how we invest in creative industries, what role we wanna play, how we actually enact our economic development plan in that space. This is a spoke of that hub and spoke. The insurance might just be one part of the puzzle. You might actually need more money than that, you know?
And it may well
Yeah,
be.
so to me, it's just, so if we can just help them get through this next 12 months and in that time have a conversation about what their ongoing, you know, operations might look like, or to Councillor DeVries' point, we could basically change that to assist in, you know, their ongoing sustainability. That's your idea?
Yeah, can we change the word review to assist?
It's like council-
First word, yeah, because that then encompasses all of the above really, doesn't it? I mean, we all know what we're trying to achieve.
Okay, so you're happy with that,
you're
councillor
supposed to
Beattie?
put change for to with. I would think.
Okay,
So long as everyone understands what we're
okay,
trying to do.
So we are-
mover and a seconder, now we'll just, councillor Johnston.
What would be the problem with just paying the insurance bill for several years?
No, that's what I'm saying here.
Because what we're dealing with here, I'm a little bit nervous about this because we've got to be accountable for how we use ratepayers' funds. These folk have not filed an ACNC return, so it's overdue, and there's no balance sheet, so we don't even know how much money they've got at bank. All there seems to be is some years ago, they had $160,000 in assets and liabilities of $144,000. So we don't even know if they're a going concern. I think it'd be really wise if we distanced ourselves from their sustainability. They can, you know, that if they're not able to operate successfully, then we would be best to make sure the building gets insured, because that's what we want as an outcome. That the building's safe and sound, and the group's got to make its own way.
Yeah, look, I'm, in the back of my mind, I'm hearing what everyone's saying, and I agree with what you're saying. I'm also sort of aware of what Ms McGann indicated, is that we're gonna get other requests similar to this. And I think we've gotta just be careful to make sure we can position ourselves to be very consistent with what we do. Because equally, the Springton Group do a marvellous job in what they've been managing, a tennis court and all the sports associated with that facility. So I think this buys us a little bit of time just to look at everything in light of how we move forward with these community-owned assets, which are providing community services, which are valuable to us to try to assist where we can.
Please indulge me, but if the situation is that we can get access to a better insurance rate through the LGA, you know, that might be a better part of the outcome, because, you know, back to the Hills and Co organ, my recollection is that it's almost uninsurable. You know, it's $3 million. I mean, place burns down, we wear it. Doesn't matter who owns it. It's on our land.
Okay, look, we do have the amendment.
I'd like to say something further in relation to what Councillor Johnson just said. The facts around the finances of the committee are all in the report.
There's no balance sheet.
Sorry?
There's no balance sheet, sorry, councillor.
Maybe not a balance sheet, but that tells me all about the committee. They are a going concern, I can tell you that right now, in a big way.
Okay.
So to make those comments, I think is a little bit.
Okay,
Well,
councillor Troop, you haven't spoken.
Just saying that I think that what we're talking about is we're talking about building capacity in our community for right or wrong, even if they're not running properly, the capacity building is what I think councillor Boothby's sort of talking about, because we've got to make our community groups stronger, so, and unified, you know, so that we know what each other are doing, hub and bespoke. So I'm pretty comfortable with this, and also setting up a precedent for other groups that come to the same issues. I think this is, if we always partner it with capacity building and, you know, that whole unified approach to community services and creative industry, I just think it works, so I really think this is good.
Okay, we have the amendment before you. I'll put the motion. Sorry, councillor Boothby, you want to close the debate, please?
I was just quickly, Councillor Johnston, that the ACNC is only for a registered charity, so as an incorporated association, they're not required to do an ACNC return.
Your worship, can I just interject? Through you. They are an ACNC registered charity, it's on the
No,
website.
they're a charity?
Yep.
Okay, well, no,
They're registered, it's the Eden Valley Congregational, it's all there.
okay, alright, okay, so I apologise. Anyway, basically, I just think this is hopefully a constructive way forward to start to connect our strategies that we have, rather than just be plans, to actually activate them. This is a way to do that through an existing group, an existing building, that hopefully this can help them, you know, exist in a positive way moving forward. That's, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'll put them up, that closes the debate. All those in favour of the amendment? Carried unanimously.
You have to put the motion, your worship.
Oh, yeah, now I've got to put the motion, sorry, yes, thank you. I'll put the motion now, the amendment now becomes the motion. All those in favour? That was carried unanimously, thank you. 192, page 35, pedestrian pathways, Murray Street, Tanunda. Councillor Haybick, I believe you've sort of got a slightly different motion to the one that went out.
That's the one I've just given you here. All I've done is changed the, just made it a bit broader, over the Murray Street to Nunda. Put the whole of the, what's the council area, I think we having a new program going up, it should affect the whole area, that's all.
So you wish to move that motion, sir?
I wish to move that motion, Inspector, yes.
So the motion is now the one that councillor Haybick has just read out, which takes into account within the council area and in particular Murray Street. Is there a seconder? Seconded, councillor Barrett. Councillor Haybick, you can now speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just read out what I've written down to keep it all in sync.
Sorry, just, Sam, is there any way we can boost the microphone on that side of the room? We're really competing with the noise of the lobby, and it's very hard to hear what
okay.
they're saying.
Yep.
The condition of the footpath in Murray Street to Nunda has been a concern for residents and tourists alike for some years. Due to the roots of many older trees in the street, pavers and large sections of cement are pushed above the ground level in places of up 2 inches, 4 centimetres, causing a hazard to walkers. On the 29th of March this year, a Tanunda resident was on a lawn walk when she tripped and fell to the cement pavement in front of 72 Murray Street, which is beans and cream. She suffered severe facial trauma. I've seen the photographs, loss of blood, and was conveyed to the Tanunda Medical Clinic for treatment. Due to the blood on her clothes, they were completely ruined. I'm informed that the condition of the footpath here had been reported to council prior to the accident, but obviously not repaired at that time. Tuesday the 7th of April, a woman visiting from Gawler tripped on poorly maintained cement and fell in front of 46 Murray Street. She was conveyed by ambulance to the Gawler Hospital with a broken arm. The pavement here was in a similar condition as the previous situation and had been reported to council, I believe, on 2 occasions but not rectified. Both these recent matters were reported to council shortly after the events, and both locations have now been repaired to a good standard. Currently, it would appear that council has a reactive method of dealing with such issues after an event. I believe council has a public responsibility for safety and well-being. We need to be cognizant of that. We have a serious problem that requires addressing. I propose, and I've spoken to Matt about it briefly, the council develop an urgent strategy detailing the methodology for effective management of footpath defects, including regular inspections, recording, and a timely manner in which the maintenance will be carried out, not only for Murray Street to Tanunda, but for the total area of the Barossa Council.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Barrett?
Councillor Habig has done an excellent job in providing information to people about footpaths in the main street of Tanunda. I've observed similar in my town over in Mount Pleasant. I can only support what Councillor Habig has put forward, and I do believe it's time we had a serious look at some of the repair and maintenance schedules on our footpaths, and I'll just leave it at that.
Councillor De Vries?
Yeah, I'm going to be very much in support of this. Ironically, the reason why this has taken so long is because we've been waiting in the queue. We had to wait for Mount Pleasant to have their footpaths finished and then Anguston to get theirs done so that we could finally get round to Tanunda, because we've got these plans in place. And maybe this council needs to think about, rather putting the towns in the queue like we've been doing, maybe we do more than one at the same time. Maybe we escalate the main streets, because as you correctly pointed out, the main street of Tanunda is probably one of the most recognised tourism areas within the Barossa area. And if people are, as you've identified, tripping and falling and, ending up in hospital as a result, clearly something needs to be done as a matter of urgency. That's quite serious. I had no idea that the problem was to that extreme, so yeah, I'm definitely supporting this.
Well, I had no idea until it was reported to me, and then I made the inquiries with the shops to see if everything was correct.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Habig, I probably, in light of your changes, I just wonder the ability for staff to come back into the main meeting with a report which does take in the whole council area. Whether we're being a little bit.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking for a report as to how we're going to go about fixing this problem. I don't want them to go out and do inspections.
Okay, well, fixing the problem could be a fairly,
Well, that's
okay,
all I'm
all
telling
right, okay. So it's just a strategy behind how they're gonna do it, okay,
The
all right.
strategy is so that we've got something in place, because I can see someone falling over and doing more than just severe facial injuries or broken.
Okay, no, that clarifies it then, all right, that's fine. Just so staff was aware that they didn't have to run around and look at every street
It's not
at
the
the
idea.
moment, okay, that's fine, yep. Councillor,
Yeah, just a couple of examples,
Councillor
when the NBN was going through Nuriutha, the chicken shop, they mucked up that area there, and Mr. Elding got onto that rather quickly. People did fall over on a grate that they'd put in, and also going into Anguston on the upside before Plushy's house, the big ex-doctor's house, someone did the same thing in that area simply because of a poorly maintained, well, asphalt, or it might have been, I don't know what it was originally, lots of potholes, so that was fixed, that whole stretch. So I guess I'm certainly in support of councillor Havig with us getting a register like we have with the trees and other things, and that would be an ideal time for us to move forward in that direction.
There's a few hands up, but I'm just going to go to the Director of Works and Engineering, Mr Elding, and then Councillor Wee-Smith, then Councillor Johnston.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Through business case one, you approved a maintenance planner, so I can report that works have commenced in doing proactive inspections on the townships. So Tanunda, Newry and Angaston have been completed. Those inspections are scheduled quarterly at this stage, and depending on the data we get back, once we get them under control, we haven't pushed that out to 6 monthly. So we have the data around the defects and where they sit with their service levels for those 3 townships. And over the next month, we'll schedule the remaining townships. And so that'll come back to you, that methodology, the results of that inspection and the service levels that we're monitoring to will come back in that report at the next meeting.
So it sounds as if you've got it in hand, that's good. Councillor Wee-Smith.
Only to support the motion and endorse the previous comments. I don't have a footpath where I live on an unsealed road, but to be honest, I'd rather be pushing a pram down that road than some of these main streets, which I've done quite a bit of pavement pouting in the last 15 months, and yeah, it's pretty rough going, especially in areas such as Tanunda, which are some of our main tourist precincts. So I think this is long overdue, and while I have the opportunity, also our unsealed road network, if we could look at taking the same approach there. We've got a lot of roads, we've discussed Goldfields Road this morning already, but that's by no means the only one. There are a lot of unsealed roads in quite bad need of repair, so it's not just footpaths, it's roads, and I think we need to be conscious of that going forward with other conversations, that these are some of our main assets, some of our main responsibilities that the community expects us to deliver on.
Okay. Councillor Johnston.
We regularly review our IAMS document, and this relates to the way in which that document ought to be used. We don't need a separate process. It should be part of our integrated asset management plan. I think what Councillor Havig's highlighting is that we are entering a phase where people are walking rather than using their cars, hopefully. And we've also got people who have disabilities who are either blind and feeling for a pavement or on a disability scooter. So I think that there needs to be a recognition from a policy perspective that we may need to make sure our footpaths are wider and in better condition. And perhaps there's an interaction with street furniture and where cafes are putting their chairs and tables and making it more difficult to go through pavements. So the amount of footpath we must have in the valley is to be, was it 110 kilometres or something? There's some huge number, so it's a big ask to keep all this in pretty good condition, but given this era we're entering where people are going to be more mobile, and the final part to this is that there is a lead indicator, there are 2 lead indicators to the problems we have with our pavements, and one of them, which when we sit on the audit committee, we ask the question, are we getting reports of trips and slips, and are people making insurance claims against the council? And the answer is no. So I think we need to recognise that there's a potential culture of people not reporting issues, which allows me to segue to, do we have an adequate CRM system where people can report defects and help the staff recognise where there may be some issues? So there's a big bundle of stuff, the IAMPs, a policy around better mobility, and finally, have we got a system that enables people to A, tell us that they've tripped and slipped and they've hurt themselves, or they're just embarrassed that they had a slight brain fade and tripped, or finally, can they get their phone out and quickly register it as a defect? Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? You wish to close the debate, Councillor Havig?
I'll close the debate, and I think enough has been said about it. It's very important, as I said before, that people are falling. It's not the first time that I've heard about it, and most people just get up and brush their knees off and scrape themselves down and fix the wounds and carry on and don't report it. And a lot of people have got the attitude that council don't care. Well, that's not the case. So that's the reason I'm bringing it up. Thank you.
Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Item 1.10 is a question with or without notice. That was a question on notice from Councillor William Smith, sporting events engagement for the region. That's on page 36. It is a recommendation there that council receives and notes the response that the question and the response be placed in the minutes. Councillor Louise Smith.
I'll move the motion.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor De Vries, wish to speak?
Yes, just quickly, thank you for the response here. I appreciate it was done on the fly in the last meeting, so it may not have captured everything I was looking for. The second part of my question at the meeting was to seek more of an update on the progress that we've had with SMA. I'd really like to see what we've got for the nearly 30 grand we spent so far. So that has been outlined there, but I really sort of feel like we've spent quite a bit of money and we're still yet to see anything. So just to highlight that, but thank you for the response.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett?
I've got a comment.
Oh, sorry, there's a seconder wish to speak? No. Okay. Councillor
Yeah,
Barrett?
just a comment. I looked at the list of events that have been put forward by SMA, and I then questioned some of these events when just recently there was the steel chainsaw events, and that was held down at Metropolitan Councils down on the beachfront. Now that to me would have been ideal to be held out at Mount Crawford, and we could have had a tremendous tourist attraction up in this area. And that's what disappoints me when I look at the list which we've been provided and the things that we missed out on. And these were national championships for the chainsaws, and down on a beachside suburb. And I just scratched my head at how they got it, and we didn't even get I don't know whether we were asked or turned it down or was presented to us. No idea. But we would have been an ideal place to have it up somewhere in Mount Crawford.
Trees.
I can speak again now, can't I? Just quickly, just to close that one. Yeah, further to Councillor Barrett's comments there, I agree. There's been a lot of events that I've seen that would have been quite suitable here. And I think what frustrates me even more so looking at this is that we have local groups who are putting on, 5-star events of their own back, and we paid someone to go out and do the work for us, and we're yet to see any return on that investment. And we only need to look at what's happening down in the southern Barossa. I'm being quite parochial here, I know, but with Royal Barossa, what a fantastic event that was, and what that is growing and the plans for other events down there. So we have people locally who are really driving this themselves, yet we've paid someone to go and do the same job, and we haven't seen anything yet.
And I guess we have a workshop agenda later on this afternoon about Barossa Contemporary Festival presentation too. So. Okay. Put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Mayor's report, page 38. Any questions?
Move the report be received.
Thanks, Councillor De Vries. Seconded, Councillor Johnston. Questions? Councillor
I'd
Weiss?
just like an update on a couple of the things in here. So I'll run through them, I won't give them all at once. But first up, just 2 corrections. Angus Recreation Park, can we get that corrected in there?
I was going to say, can you update your spell check, please? Thank you.
Okay, thank
I just
you.
wanted to leave that there.
I thought
Sorry about
about it,
that.
but I thought I might pull that one up. And also, the member for Barker, Tony Payson, not Payson.
Yeah, I've got to get her to start to speak.
I don't want to be that
my
person, but
No, fair enough. Thank you.
yeah, so just a couple of the meetings you've got on here I'd like to hear updates from. One being on the 16th of March, the Barossa Character Preservation Area Roundtable. Just what that was about and any outcomes from that, please.
I'll throw to Mr. Maverick. You can give a better summary than I will.
Thanks through the mayor. So this was a body of work that we engaged Paul Micken to review the Character Preservation District with new PDI legislation. So the round table was a group of key stakeholders that were invited to provide input to some of the key issues that they're facing. So that body of work has been completed. We got now a draft discussion paper that will be presented back to the steering committee with the intention then to invite the planning commission up to the Barossa to discuss the issues that have been identified through the various forums that have been held today. So we're hoping that I liaised with the assistant for the commission last week seeking a date. The steering committee will consider that discussion paper at its next special meeting next week.
Yes, 21st.
21st. So yeah, hopefully by May, hopefully we'll have a round table discussion with the commission.
What would be the top 3 issues that were identified?
Off the top of my head, trying to recall the paper. Obviously, in terms of some of the previous work that the council has identified in terms of rat and mice type issues, obviously in terms of character and actually what that means and having a true definition of what character under the legislation is going to mean in terms of the code, and in terms of the opportunities for diversification of land use within Barossa in terms of activities that sort of will be inconsistent with the character of the Barossa Valley. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll move on to the next one.
Yep.
The culture awareness training, which was also at the Barossa Cellar, what was that one about?
That was an invitation and that was arranged through Barossa Australia.
Yep.
And we was given an opportunity to send, myself and some staff members along. And we appreciated the opportunity, and that was really just to talk about engaging further, and was really assist us with some of our discussions. But it was very much run and funded, and we was provided an opportunity to be involved by Barossa Australia, and Uncle, who was our facilitator, which was most informative. Yeah, Ghana, yeah, it was very good, excellent.
Yeah.
And it supports where we sort of are developing our relationships. We're sort of talking about through the local group of visiting and having them, the elders from the naturally come and visit with us. So it just was talking about how to really engage.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think I've got an idea of this one, but the team's meeting with Santos representatives, I assume that's to do with the field, the Barossa field up in the Northern Territory.
It is.
Is there anything more that you can
look,
advise with
other
that?
than that we just reinforced, and Martin was involved in that meeting as well. We just reinforced our position and sort of highlighted the fact is that, we don't think it's going to go away, even though they've told us that this has been named. And we actually found out it's been named even well before what we thought was told previously. We did sort of highlight that there may be other opportunities. They're still going to go back and see what else they can do. But it really was just, I know some questions were being asked of me where it's at, so we convened another meeting just to get an update and just reinforce our position. I think at the end of the day, we probably all concluded that, if we start, we assumed the council wouldn't want us to go get lawyered up to tackle this one.
Yeah.
But the community may, I don't, so that's another issue. Yep.
Thank you. And the Ukrainian deputation to the LGA meeting just recently, obviously that's not necessarily local, but I'm interested just in hearing what you heard from Deputy Mayor Andrew, I'm not going to try and say his surname, from Vinistia.
Yeah, look, it was a presentation to sort of get that local council perspective from what's happening over there and the impact it's having. So it was really just reinforcing what we're seeing on the news and the terrible experiences those people are going through. And it was just really to sort of highlight the fact there's any support that, can be provided, doesn't matter where that support comes from, it's gonna be most welcome. But, yeah, there was some fairly dramatic photographs that were shown that we're not seeing in some of the media. But yeah, it was, yeah, and I guess in some respects it was probably disappointing to see and I did raise this at the LGA, just with some of the executive, it was disappointing to see that there was only about 5 or 6 local councils that tuned in, so, which was interesting. Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
One question, if you just enlighten me about the date, 24/3, the Regional Sports Event Fund. Can you give us a bit more information about that, please?
Oh, okay, well, that sort of highlights that there is a lot of enthusiasm down in the areas associated with what we're talking about, the ecotourism and the opportunities associated with the Warren Reservoir and what that's opened up. So it was a meeting with Barossa Tourism and RDA representatives just to see, they're looking at going after grant money to put on an adventure festival, which will take in a whole range of different activities associated, once again, with the opening of the reservoirs, but also, which also look at other adventures, because we've got national parks down there, like rock climbing and all sorts of things. So there was a lot of enthusiasm to try to activate that space down there, as far as coinciding with where we want to go, as far as Williamstown Oval eventually being ecotourism hub, and that southern area picking up on that. So what's happened is that Tourism Barossa and those are now working with the organisers to see if they can work up a grant application and see what funds are available. I think, Maz, was you involved in that one as well, or? No, I'm trying to think. Oh, sorry, it was Miss Tappert was involved as well. But yeah, it's really seeking grant funding and just seeing what our appetite might be. So there might be further report come back on that one.
Happy with the explanation.
Thank you. Councillor Troop.
Just got a question about the Reconciliation Industry Network Group with the LGA. Can you just give us direction or like what happened?
Yeah, look, that's a group that just gets together with different council representatives talking about what they're doing. I don't think it spins its wheels, put it that way. But I thought I've just joined in just to hear what people are saying and what they are contemplating, and every now and then I have my little bit input as to where we think we may be moving, bearing in mind that we're still in the early stages, but I'm not hearing a lot of real meaty things coming out of it at the moment. Thank you. But I thought it's worthwhile me just sitting in the fringe. Any further? I'll put the motion, thank you. I'll watch the corrections in future. All carried, thank you.
You should circulate your phone number so that people can ask you questions from time to time.
Yeah, all good, all good. It's encouraging, you're all reading it, so it's good. Okay, consensus agenda. And Councillor Hearn did say to me he had to leave at a certain time, so he's excused himself. Consensus agenda. Any items that Councillor Barrett?
I've got 2 I'd like to be taken out. I've got a couple of questions in relation to them. Item 4.5.1 and item 4.7.3.
What pages were they on, sir?
Page 60 and page 71.
Thank you. Any other items? Would someone like to move the consensus agenda? Councillor Johnston, seconded Councillor Wee-Smith. All in favour? Carried. Page 60. Councillor Barrett.
As I read through the big project priority list, I did note the Great Australian Wine Trail. I'm trying to understand how that got in the big project, the process involved. I might be wrong, but I I know we've discussed it, but I can't see how it actually got in the priority list for work to be done on it. I can see plenty of good reasons why it should be, but I'm trying to understand the process involved, how it actually got in that particular list.
Thank you. I'll let, thank you, Ms Thomas.
Through you, Mayor, so the cycle, regional cycle work was always a pillar of the big project. I don't know if you can remember that visual with all the different diagrams with the petals all around it. So cycling and trails was always a pillar of that. When we started that, we didn't know that it was actually going to evolve into what's become the Great Australian Wine Trail, but that's where it's ended up. So it's come through a bit of a circuitous process, but
Yeah, circuitous route, no, that's,
so it's still very much part of my objectives.
yep, no, I'm happy with the explanation, thank you.
And I must say that some of the opportunities I've had with federal members to talk about it, and even spoke to Senator Birmingham, and his suggestion was that as a council we probably should talk to the state. I did raise it last Wednesday with the new tourism minister, and she was very supportive of the concept and everything else. But, yep. So you're happy with that one?
Yeah, happy with that one, yes.
You'll move that one, that item?
Yes. Happy to move that
Can I
one.
just ask another question about that report?
Yeah, please, thank you.
I just, looking at the projects awaiting grant funding with the creative industries, I see that it's been broken up into 2 phases. Could we just have an update on what's happening there with the grant applications with the Creative Industries Centre?
Thank you. Ms Thomas?
Through you, Mayor, so when we did some feedback and some roundtabling with both the federal and state representatives about January time, I think that was, the feedback was that what we were asking for from the federal government was too much, basically. So we went through a process of whether or not we could actually phase that project. And when we did that analysis, and we were doing that pretty quickly because we were actually waiting to put the grant application in, we looked at the potential for us to take the open space element out as a separate phase. So you may recall that last year we put in a separate application for open space funding just for the external elements. So it does lend itself to doing that as a separate phase, but not including the car park. So clearly we couldn't build the building without the car parking, so that is still included in phase 1. Potentially the timing of all of this would mean that there would be another round of open space funding, which is state funding, which potentially comes out normally around June, July, August time, and we're in a position to straight away put an application in for that element. So if we were successful with Building Better Regions Fund, and we were successful with the open space funding, the project could all still be delivered in its entirety because we do the open space at the end in any event. So that's how we've sort of phased the project at the moment.
Thank you.
And I did have an opportunity to lobby that with the federal tourism minister, and I suggested to him, he said, where is your local member on it? And he said, well, he keeps telling me he's got a small bucket, so can you please give him a bigger bucket to work with in the future? So, thank you. I need a seconder for that one. Second that that item be received.
I had a couple of questions.
Same item?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we won't close that up.
No, just further to Councillor Barrett's question with the Great Australian Wine Trail, when did this become a priority 1 project? Because I don't recall it being on the wall when we went through the prioritisation process.
Didn't get any glued up.
Yeah, I thought, I was led to believe that it was always included that we were doing this work with the council. That was the priority. That was where we was pushing our thrust forward on developing it with the 6 councils involved and doing the business case, which we've done. We've sort of got to that point. Now it's really how we lobby to get the funds.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, as I said, I'm just trying to understand how it's
Yeah,
been
no,
prioritised.
it was always a priority as far as us doing the groundwork to work up a business plan in conjunction with the adjoining councils. Is there anything further to that, Ms Thomas, that you're aware of?
Through you, no, not really, and it doesn't have any council funding associated with it.
No,
Yeah.
that's right.
So the-
Other than us develop the business plan, yep.
The premise of that was that the upfront capital would need to be wholly funded.
Yes.
And that it would be the whole of life maintenance that would need to be supported by the council, and that would all have to come back through council in any event if we were to come up with a model of financing, which we don't have yet.
I believe there's a golden opportunity for grant funding at the moment to connect Williamstown Oval to the Warren, which I think would coincide with a lot of other things,
A
but
couple more questions just
Okay.
while we're on this item. I was just looking at, sorry, I've lost my notes. Toolunga Park equestrian facilities, what work we've done to identify suitable grants, because obviously there's Building Better Regions, which we've put something else in for. But yeah, I'm just interested to know, because we want to get some work happening at Mount Pleasant, and obviously, sorry, I'm not turning my back to you now, with the work stalling at the caravan park at present, you know, what else we're doing out there.
So the work is a full slather of the caravan park. We've been doing tenders and you know, so there's a huge amount of work actually being done. We looked at potential, I think it was emergency, I can't remember the name of the grant funding, which came out originally, and Horse SA flagged that it was an opportunity for us to go for that. It didn't come out during COVID. I think there may have been one round that came out, probably, I think it was Councillor Barrett, we talked about it about 6 months ago, but we didn't meet the criteria because the facility isn't in an identified emergency evacuation zone, so we couldn't go for that. We were going to miss out on one of the criteria, and that is the last lot of funding that we've looked at. So haven't identified anything else that it ticks the boxes of. It doesn't tick any of the boxes of the Office of Rec and Sport funding. We've looked at that several times. So no, I haven't got anything else that we've looked at yet.
Yeah, okay.
Councillor Barrett does come up with some suggestions from time to time for sure, and we always follow those through.
With that one, we fitted the criteria, but we would have been 20 points behind in the rating scale because we weren't in the appropriate area, as Councillor Thomas, Ms Thomas said. So yes, we weren't quite there. We were 20 points behind before we even started.
Have
Thank
we had
you.
any movement on tenders?
I've allowed a bit of leeway because it was Easter and we didn't have a chance to ask these questions, so thank you. Second the motion. All those in favour of that item B?
I still had a couple more questions.
Still on that item?
I did.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, if you got questions, I'll allow you to do it.
Okay, just seeking some updates.
Sorry,
on some
folks,
of these
I'll just-
projects.
Once again, it's just the mere fact that you didn't have a chance to ask these questions, so.
Yeah, it came out quite late, this agenda. Just some updates on the rugby and soccer projects.
The rugby and soccer project?
Yeah, so I've got the funding, so where we're
Yeah,
at.
so through you, with the soccer project, so we are, I think we're about 80% through all the civil work. The synthetic pitches on the ship coming from Italy, and the lights are on the ship coming from Germany. They're due to arrive during May. The pitch will take us about 4 weeks to construct, so we're on target to get all of that done by the end of June. The lights is a much quicker build. All the civil and service and trenching for the lights is in the process of being done now. If you go up to the site, you'll see that we put all the footings in for all the fences last week. The club rooms and change rooms still has to go through development approval. The club had the last design last week, and also New Centennial Park. So that's probably as much as I've got on soccer. In relation to rugby, so rugby, the development approval is still pending the native vegetation assessment. We had that report last week, and we're having to take that back to I can't remember what it's called, the Native Vegetation Assessment Panel. They wanted us to go with 2 days' notice, which wasn't in accordance with their terms of reference, I think they're called. So we're now going to the May meeting for that. And the building for that one is just about to be put in for development approval. They're two separate packages. The pitch and the oval, we put them in separately as we did for the soccer project. And I think we're just waiting on the final services for that to go back through the assessment of the development approval process. So I think that's it.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor. I think it's important to note too that these questions aren't just for my benefit, they are for the broader community and public who are listening in on the meeting. They want to know what's happening with this stuff too. So we can ask questions over the phone, sure, but that doesn't help the public understand what's happening.
Absolutely understood. Thank you.
So you may just on that, and if people are listening, then we have done a heap of work to update the website for the big project. There's a lot more up-to-date information on that now, so please hop on and have a look at that.
Thank you. Final call. All those in favour? Carried. Councillor Barrett.
Second item, must praise staff on their food premises inspections. I see in March they did a total of 35, but what pricked my interest in relation to that was 11 re-inspections. Can anyone enlighten me why we keep going back and get some idea why we keep going back to places? Are we about 1/3 work going back? Are they very low level items?
Through the Mayor, basically the re-inspections is to follow up on the compliance, to make sure that they have actually done what we've actually identified. So yeah, if something has been identified as non-conforming, obviously they get an opportunity to rectify, and obviously the re-inspection is just to double check that they've achieved their compliance.
Thank you.
You move that item?
Yes, second.
Seconded Councillor Louise Smith. All those in favour? Carried. We'll move to item 7.2, the Office of Mayor and CEO, monthly finance reports on page 76.
Move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Moved Councillor De Vries, seconded Councillor Johnston. Either one wish to speak to it? Any questions?
I think that's a no.
All those in favour, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, carried. Next one is 7.2.2, the Regional Development Australia, Barossa, Gawler Light, Adelaide Plains Incorporated, RDA, funding agreement on page 79.
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Moved Councillor Boothby and seconded Councillor Barrett. You wish to speak?
I'd just like to, I know I'm not the spokesperson for the council, but I'd like to thank Anne Moroney for her work. It's excellent what she does over there at RDA, and that's sort of personal level, so that's all I'd like to say in relation to it.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? All those in favour? Carried. The item 7.6.1, I probably do need to apologise, but not to Councillor Hearn this time. I sent an email out withdrawing it. I cannot, under changes that's been made, withdraw it. Councillor De Vries?
Yes, and with that in mind, I'd like to move an alternative motion. And the gist of it, I think Janine has the wording, that this report be brought back to the May meeting with amendments and edits incorporated into the draft plan. And I'll speak to the rationale behind that. If somebody is willing to second it.
Seconded Councillor Johnston.
It's a fairly formal process actually, it's just that if we don't do this, then there's no way that it can be amended before going out to the public for consultation, so that's the reason why we're doing it.
Councillor Johnston.
Councillor De Vries has summed it up.
Okay, any other question, comment? All those in favour? Come back. Carried. Thank you.
Feel free to flesh that out with the language if you need to.
Next one is Works and Engineering, 7.6.2, which is the intersection of Murray Street, Kalimna Road, Niriyupa, curb and water table project on 286, page 286.
Move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Moved councillor De Vries, seconded councillor Schilling. Speak to the motion, councillor.
I think we all know that this is something would be of great benefit to the entire Barossa. It's it's one of the entrances into the town of Niriyupa, and it's an important one. I think the only thing I would add is that we use $100,000 as a guide, but if we don't end up spending that much, I don't think I'll be upset.
Agree. Councillor Schilling?
Oh no, I echo that same sentiment, that it is one of the town entrances, of which Niriyupa has 5, and it'd be great to see that improved.
Any other comments? All those in favour? Carried. Item 7.6.3 on page 294.
Move the motion.
294, thank you, which is the Special Local Roads Program grant application. Moved councillor Hayvick. Seconded councillor De Vries. Councillor Hayvick?
Yes, I think this section of road really needs a bit of work done on it. I've driven over it many times with learner drivers, and I've always, most times, had my foot on the left-hand brake pedal in the car. So just keep that. I'm just adding that in there. Or you grit your teeth, one of the two. So the road needs some attention. There's no doubt. It's narrow, it's windy, and that section of road comes off some straight, long sections where people tend to put their foot down. When they get to those corners, they run into a bit of trouble. So I'll approve that with no problems at all.
I'm more inclined to think it's narrow when I'm cycling on it, the car's going past me, but then. Councillor De Vries?
I can't think of the number of times I've been out here looking at that road over the last 4 years, probably over the last 20 years. Yeah, it needs work, and we need to do as much as we can out there as possible.
I think, Mr. Elding, I believe we've got, this is special local grant roads one, we've also got a grant application in for Caton Road as well, haven't we? A rural grant application?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct. That is seeking 80% funding from the federal government for remote roads. It's the program. But yes, that's been submitted and awaiting for a response from the Australian government.
So hopefully we get both those grants.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and both these projects, the council contribution will form part of the base budget and will go out for consultation.
Thank you. Yep. Okay, any further question? All those in favour? Carried. Um, 7.6.4, which is the development of the Rifle Range Road, Crondoff, page 301. This
I'll move
is
that then.
moved councillor Hayvick, seconded councillor Boothby. Councillor Hayvick, you wish to speak?
Yeah, just briefly, this item came up at the last assessment panel, which was approved for a tourism type place to be built in there on the hill face. And the road is narrow there and bushy, and so the council's come to an agreement with the owners and they're paying for it to redevelop that section of road, so it needs doing.
Councillor Boothby? Once again, I can only echo the fact that it is very narrow when I'm on my push bike and I meet a car, let alone another car. All those in favour? Oh, sorry, question.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you. Just a quick one. I'm just wondering when the road was last classified, because I noticed it's got the lowest classification level.
Yeah, look, it's a valid point, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I think, Mr. Elding, we need to drop that reclassification, because I think that's one I did 20 years ago. I think we need to.
I was just
review-
concerned because it had no tourist information.
Yeah, no, look, that's a 20 years old document, and back then, and now it's got a lot of tourists
Yeah,
going up there on a regular basis, I can assure you, so.
we might need to look at that.
Yeah, I think we've got to drop that chart, those charts at the moment until we update them, yeah.
Thank you.
Good point. I meant to raise that too, so. Now, no further questions? All those in favour? Carried. We now move to the Development and Environment Services, the appoint a council member to the Building Fire Safety Committee on page 316.
With the recommendation, Your Worship.
Moved councillor Johnston, seconded councillor Troop. Either one wish to speak? Any questions?
I was going to move councillor Angus, but I guess that's not possible.
I wouldn't qualify.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Next item is page 318, which is the Barossa Local Economic Development Plan post-consultation document 7.7.2 on page 318.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Yep, moved councillor DeBreeze,
I'll second it. But I'd
seconded.
just like to point out that there's quite a number of errors in the thing, so I just wonder whether we need an amendment that gives the CEO the opportunity to tidy it up a bit.
I'll let you speak to it first and then we'll, councillor DeBreeze, you got any comment?
No, other than I thought we'd get more responses, and that they'd be more comprehensive, but, you know, it's good that there are people out there who are engaging, so that's great. I'm happy as the mover to have any language you feel needs tweaked.
Yeah, it can't just,
Yep.
for example, the Barossa Council is not capitalised.
Yeah.
For example. So a few things need tidying up.
Mr Mavronek, you're onto that one? Yep. Councillor Boothby and then councillor Wee Smith.
I have a question, so obviously I understand that it incorporates an action plan which talks about different roles and that sort of stuff, but in terms of funding for implementation and timing, so there's some fairly meaty conversations for us to have as an elected member group. And Mr Mavronek, I've had conversations around housing, for example. We're talking about doing a housing strategy. I think that the more conversations we can have with this group before November would be great, because obviously then we have a potentially brand new set of councillors who will take some time to be comfortable moving forward. So I'm just keen to know what funding funding needs are there, resourcing this now, and also the timing of some of the key imperatives in that.
So through the, I think, you and I had that conversation. I think what's going to be important too, obviously there's one new initiative that's already in consideration, is the growth and infrastructure investment strategy, which will address, I think, quite a number of the actions within the plan. I think it'd be appropriate that between now and November, maybe utilising some of the workshops to use each one of the strategy projects and have a conversation around those to actually flesh out a little bit more the actions, and then obviously then bring back potential costings for delivery.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wee Smith?
Just further to councillor DeVries' comments regarding the number of responses, I guess more of a broader question, are we actually happy with the number of responses we received to this, because it's quite a significant document, and it's a 5-year plan, and again, I've raised this before, do we need to take a look at our engagement practices to ensure that we are getting better engagement on documents such as this, which, as I said, are quite important to the council's direction.
Through the Mayor, obviously, we try to engage far and wide. We obviously had a number of people we engaged in the early online survey, which we targeted various interest groups in terms of the diversity of potential economic providers within the region. We had the co-design workshop where equally we invited a whole range of stakeholders to provide input to that. Ultimately, you can invite they don't necessarily attend. There's criticism that, you know, we didn't invite certain grazers and other livestock producers. You've probably noted that in one of the submissions. They were invited. But like I said, you can only invite people to attend. I was a bit disappointed probably in the consultation response, given the fact that we had those people engaged in the online and co-design workshop, that they didn't necessarily provide further comment during the consultation. That might mean that they were satisfied with the content. Again, you know, without them providing a response one way or the other, you can only assume they were comfortable with the draft as it was presented. We tried to broaden it as far and wide as possible, not just for public notice.
Yeah,
Yep.
as I say, I saw the online and that, but guess I'm thinking, a bit more proactive, person stuff, but yeah.
Councillor Troop, then Councillor Angus.
I actually shared it with a few business owners, especially in the IT area, and I don't know whether they engaged, but I'm just saying that was an issue, like we pulled out of when we were discussing it. But like you can lead a horse to water, you can't make a drink, can you? So, but I did do a little bit of work in the background because I thought, come on, let's if you want to speak into it, here is the time. Speak. I don't know whether that is, so.
Now, I know there's a few times I had opportunity to flag it with people that there is a plan out there, and I know through our local media and other outlets. But Councillor Angus.
Well, I think we can take heart that the few submissions that were put in appeared to come from people with an axe to grind. The rest of the community seem to either be they don't care or they're very happy with the job we're doing. So it was very clear that there was harsh criticism of certain sections. Now, that's people's right, prerogative, and no one will deny them that. But it is very disappointing that there were only 6. But as Gary said, we invited, and even those who were invited said they weren't. In one, as I think you've just said, the grains and the stock people were invited. There was a letter there, you know. Anyway, as Councillor Troop said, you can lead a horse to water.
Yeah.
So through the mayor, I just point out, the consultants that assisted us with this, he said that a colleague was doing a similar plan for one of the councils, I think it was in Queensland or New South Wales, can't remember which particular council, but much larger than the Barossa in terms of population and obviously economic investment. They only received less than us in terms of submissions. So, you know, it just shows that despite every effort to engage with the community, we get what you get.
Councillor Johnston.
A gratuitous comment, but I note with interest that some respondents said that they weren't well engaged, and yet the trail of evidence was that they were. So, you know, I'd hate for the public to be reading this and saying, oh, we weren't engaged, when in fact, clearly they were. And disappointingly, one particular organisation sent a very minor functionary along to the meeting. And so, you know, you just go, well, you just have to accept that you didn't engage.
When they're finished, I'll close.
You'll close the debate.
Yeah, just a comment. I like to praise the Eden Valley community. I spoke to their local tourism body and I saw they put in a response, and out of that response there'll be some further inclusion from the creative industry. So I'd just like to thank the Eden Valley body, and also coming out of that same meeting, we had Lynn Jones speak to us just recently on Australia Day issues. So the people down there, they listen quite intently, and so the information I provide to them, you can see the response they have provided through their tourism body. Yep.
I think in relation to consultation, if you look at all the consultation processes that have gone out, we don't really get too many replies, and it's a constant thing. So the laser's fear by the general public that I want to make a lot of noise, but when it comes to getting back to us, it doesn't happen. I encourage people to do that. That's where we get out.
Any other comments? Councillor De Vries?
Yeah, I guess if we'd had 200, we'd all be really worried. So, I mean, sometimes these things are hard to view. Look, when we actually were being briefed on this right at the get-go, one of the things I noted was that a lot of what was being proposed we're already doing, and sometimes just the mere act of checking that, reviewing it, and making sure people are sort of aware of the areas that we're focusing our attention on can be as much and can be as important as making wholesale changes. I think perhaps the numbers may reflect the fact that a lot of people are comfortable that many of the things that are being proposed are things we're doing anyway. So it may be that. Who knows? We're playing crystal ball here, but I wouldn't read too much into it. But it was curious. I would have, like everyone else, I thought we would have got a bigger response, but I certainly wouldn't want 200. So anyway.
We just make sure through you, Mayor, that we've got a line that gives the CEO the opportunity to edit the document.
Yep, okay. I think we can, take that as a given.
I'll make sure that.
And that the CEO adjusts as required, something, whatever.
All those in favour? Carried. Page 487, 7.7.3, which is the corporate plan 2022-2023. It seeks endorsement of the corporate plan and endorse on the amendment to the strategy within the community plan. Councillor De Vries. Councillor Johnston. Councillor De Vries, the mover, and Councillor Johnston, the seconder. I'll just let the mover.
I just always like it when we get the language shorter and shinier. So.
Councillor Johnston.
I agree.
Councillor Schilling.
I have a number of questions. Is this the right place to ask all of them? Okay. I have 6, just so I can finish. On page 555, Vintage Festival is mentioned as annual, but it's biannual. 569, there is a heritage app that is in the development almost finished, that isn't included in there. 558, I had a question on community facility plan, master plans. Is that applicable to all our community facilities, or how many master plans for our community facilities are available to look at? Or where are they available to look at?
558.
Well, I'm pretty confident they'd be on our webpage as to where they are available to look at.
Sorry, which page are we on? 558?
558.
558.
Okay. Okay.
Let me get there as well.
So do you want to keep the copy for these ones at all? Not really fast. That's cool. I can take these ones anyway. If you want, I'll give you some.
We'll take that on notice. We'll just have a look at that and just.
Because I didn't think that we had many master plans in place, but I knew that there was some work being done on it, so I was just interested to get updated on that.
There is a number of master plans from memory still floating around.
But I just wondered how detailed that is, whether that's every hall and every pool and, every facility in our.
No, I don't think it goes to
that far, yeah.
I don't think it goes to that level of detail. But there
Okay.
would be
Did you need this from that?
infrastructure plans and things like that, which may pick up on some of those individual items. 557.
It was great to see the. Oh no, that's not right. With the bush gardens being propagating and growing plants, it talks about delivery of agreed programs, but I just wondered how. So the bush gardens are. There's a relationship to grow and propagate seeds and plants, but there's no mention of actually planting those trees anywhere and those shrubs. So I just wondered how those two things work together in the plan.
And things like that is the sale of too, isn't it?
Yeah, but there says delivery of agreed programs, but who identifies what those programs are?
Through the Mayor, those programs are the ones that are through the NRC program.
Yeah, okay.
So obviously Northern York will probably facilitate, given the new alliance.
And I know at the Landcare Awards, there was other people who got awards, but the plants that they've planted and the seeds come from our bush gardens, so through the Landcare group.
I just wonder if this plan is the place to put more pressure on developers to do more with reserve spaces in new housing developments. They're left with reserve areas, but they don't develop them. They just leave these dusty pieces of dirt with weeds on that we have to maintain. But can more pressure be put on developers to do more?
I think in recent years we have picked up on that quite considerably. In the earlier years, it was something that was generally overlooked.
No, I wouldn't say that this is necessarily the right document.
Right document, okay, thank you. I have a question on streetlight installation. Is that all streetlights, or what part of streetlight installation is council and what is SA Power Networks?
All comes back to council.
All come back to council?
And the department, we paid for a sum of money towards department roads as well, as far as the ongoing maintenance. I think that's still the same, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And finally, I look forward to the youth programs being activated within the plan. So thank you. I learnt a whole lot from reading through that plan. It's excellent, and it certainly explained a lot of the work, and well done to the staff, because that's a great plan to have for us to all learn the wider parameters of what this council does. So thank you.
Well done. Councillor Boothby.
It's just a comment more than anything. I understand what Councillor Schilling's saying in terms of the information that's been provided to us today in this report, but it is massively granular. It's really, really right down into operational stuff, which I understand that's what its purpose is. Because my only reason for raising that is when we get to the reporting against this, I would not want to see us having to get a report against every single one of those service actions. So it's broken up into strategic actions and service actions. We are a strategic decision-making group, and whilst I appreciate the information is great, there might be a different way of providing us that information for information without having to do reporting against all of that, because a lot of the stuff that's in here I would have thought would be in the next level down in terms of the directorate plans and also position descriptions. This is a lot of detail in here that wouldn't normally sort of come to us.
Yes, Mr.
Through the Mayor, that was very much the intent. Through the process of the last few months, obviously we're asking people to roll up as high level as possible. We didn't achieve that across all the business units as much as I would have liked. And obviously through the discussions is that the directorate service plans would be the more granular elements of this, because obviously trying to encapsulate what was in the service level statements, all the documentation that was done by LKS, bringing that into this document. So yes, I think from a reporting point of view, council would only want to see the strategic actions on an ongoing basis, whereas obviously as a director and as the executive, we want to see what's happening at the service level.
No. Very good. Councillor Barrett.
I commend the staff for the work they've done, but I have great difficulty with the document trying to compare apples with apples. And my rationale behind that is, I've read the service level document, and that's been my Bible, what we do as a council, all 147 pages of that document. And I now read the corporate plan and trying to align the 36 service areas with that document and seeing whether we're reducing services or increasing services and knowing exactly where we stand. I'm having great difficulty. And then we take it to the next level, and then we see that the final gaps, and so this is straight from page 490 of the report, and it says, noting the final gaps will be incorporated, including the net cost and performance measures. So I can be asked to approve a corporate plan, but I'm not knowing the final costs. and I have great difficulty in that position as a councillor without knowing the final cost approving this particular document.
So again, through the Mayor, so the net cost is obviously once the budget's adopted, those will be, the cost centres for the budgets are aligned to those service outputs. So each of the directors has been asked to portion each cost centre to that service area output. So notionally, if for instance, obviously dog and cat is a good example, obviously all the cost centres that are associated with that will be 100% allocated to those outputs. So it's not until the budget's adopted that I'm able to do that, because at the moment that's what we're, as an executive, we've agreed to do in terms of net cost. As I said in the report, with terms of performance measures, the executive felt that it was too early in this stage to agree on what our performance measures are. There are multiple performance measures that could be assigned to each of these service areas. So at the moment we felt that would be better to work through and use the next few months to finalise that to present back to council once we agree, because we don't want to have too many performance measures per service area. We want to hone in on one or two key measures rather than having multiple.
So does that mean we could be adding items?
Now the intention is
Or is that
only to add the net cost, which like I said, which will be less than the budget, and then to add the appropriate performance measure for each of the service areas. So there's no additional actions being proposed at this stage.
Okay.
I was a little bit, I was a little bit bewildered also. I read it a couple of times.
Could you just speak up a little bit, councillor?
I was a little bit bewildered as well, and I read it a couple of times, but there's no cost there. Is there any way that can be updated?
Yeah, the intention is that once we allocate the appropriate cost centre for each of the service outputs, then it will be an automatic process that we can actually do that on an annual basis. And then as the budget is adopted, then those figures will be provided much earlier in the process. The intention is this corporate plan will be reviewed annually, so that those costs will be obviously based on the adopted budget. Hopefully in terms of process, we'll have that aligned more quickly. It's just that at this stage we haven't had that percentage breakdown. So it might be that some cost centres automatically are straight 100% to an output. Other cost centres might attribute, to a portion of a service area. So again, an example within my area is that local nuisance is split over two outputs potentially. So there's cost centre, so it's 50-50 cost that we're going to attribute to that net cost for that service. So there's a bit of body of work that had to be done before we had to present that to you.
Yeah, I just think we're thinking on the long thing of the lines. If we vote for that now, we're voting for the cost in the end, which they're not there.
So what you're passing is obviously the service outputs and areas that you're agreeing to the changes that have been made, so that we can actually attribute those costs to. And then obviously we're asking you to obviously adopt the strategic actions and the service actions that are within the corporate plan, noting that the performance measures is a body of work that will be presented to you before the first quarterly reporting of the corporate plan.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm hearing your concerns are that we might be putting the cart before the horse.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. You got it.
And I'm probably hearing that you're saying this gives them direction then to cost it up appropriately based on, so.
Because
yeah.
I'll just speak further to that through you, Mr. Mayor. Essentially, what we're seeing and what you're seeing is a maturity in the way that we're doing our internal business planning. So you will note in our previous corporate plan that there was some very rudimentary information in there. There was nothing around cost attribution or timeframes necessarily. And so what we're seeking to do is to broaden the maturity of our organisation and for our staff to understand the cost inputs into delivering those services. So if you can consider it to be a continuation of sorts from that perspective, why we're taking the time to undertake that further financial assessment and also look at the
performance measures is there is some science that sits behind that, some methodology that we need to put some rigour behind and have a consensus view on, so that we're applying that consistently across the business. And it's more challenging for certain areas where we haven't necessarily been able to have a finite cost attribution. So a lot of our internal corporate services, for example, they're more difficult because there's no actual tangible service output to the community at the end of that. So what you could have ended up seeing was a document that had partial information completed, so perhaps for the external services and not so much the internal business services. So at the moment, the business plan or the corporate plan is supported by our annual business and budget plan and is aligned to the budget provisions that council has provided us historically. And in the upcoming budget that you'll be asked to endorse shortly for public consultation, we've made amendments to support the delivery of these services at their current levels. So the discretionary component is the strategic actions, which are aligned to our community plan, and the service levels have been delivered in quantifiable amounts for quite some time since LKS did that piece of work, and that's where we'll come from time to time to you to say, look, we're actually proposing an increase or a reduction in a service level, and provide a report to you at that time to make those amendments. So essentially what we're trying to do is increase our transparency, but we're incrementally moving there, and we could hold the process up. But essentially we're trying to also provide line of sight for our staff to understand where we require them to deliver their services to deliver on your vision in the community plan, or the community's vision for those deliverables as well.
Thank you. No, I think that sort of clarifies it for me. Everyone else okay? Councillor True.
So this is actually, just for my clarification, the actual services that are out working now, because I noticed with the youth that the only thing that's under youth is the driving instructor program. So obviously it's not actually reflecting the fact that we might do things in the future. Is that correct?
3 years.
No.
3 years, ma'am. Sorry.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yep.
So as we're about to have a workshop today to speak to that broader community development, social inclusion focus, and this will very much be a living document where we'll do an annual review, but it can be modified at any time to suit changes in levels of service.
It doesn't exclude anything that you want to.
But this is a snapshot now,
Yep.
right now, almost, yeah, great. That's all, I just wanted to clarify.
Any further questions? Mr. DeVries, did you have your hand up?
No, that's all right.
Okay, all right. Now, I'm trying to remember.
Councillor DeVries, that has to close the debate.
Councillor DeVries moves it. Do you want to close the debate?
No, I don't have anything to add to what.
Okay, thank you. All those in favour? Carried. 7.4 is a review of council policy for development fee exemptions for community organisations on page 668. Any points of clarification? Councillor Johnston?
Just perplexed as to how the title of the policy relates to what we're actually doing here, so I wonder, am I understanding something? This is about exemptions, yet it's a fee policy, so it's very targeted at exemptions, so shouldn't it be about a fees exemption policy? I don't know, question.
Through the Mayor, I mean, obviously just to simplify language as much as possible, so title's the title, the policy is the content.
Yeah, if you went looking for it though, you wouldn't know what you're looking for policy for exemption.
There's a motion there that we adopt the amended council policy, development application fees policy in the attachment. Councillor Angus, you're moving. Seconded Councillor True. Councillor Angus?
No, thank you.
Councillor True? Any further comment? All those in favour? Carried. 7.7.5 is the draft dog catch management plan on page 674. 674.
I move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Moved councillor Johnston, seconded councillor Smith. You seconding?
Yeah, I'll second it and then I'll
Okay.
speak. Yep.
Councillor Johnston,
No, I think it's pretty self-evident that this is the future. I'm just amused that it supports my view that Williamstown is one giant dog park with the second highest dog ownership in the region. That's what I see on the street.
councillor Smith.
Yeah, I guess this is probably more of a question. I was looking to see whether or not we may need to do an amendment here. Similar to the roadside vegetation management plan, there's a few errors, typographical, grammatical, etc. Some of the writing in here is quite messy, and I'm concerned that those changes won't be made before it goes to the public. So I'm not going to go through a list of where all the errors are there, but there are quite a few I noticed as I read through it. So do we need an amendment on this motion that authorises those changes to be made before it's released to the public?
Are they significant changes?
Oh, they are. I mean, there's sentences that don't make sense.
I probably didn't have time to read every page of this one and do the realignment.
Yeah, it's not just a spelling error here and there. There are sentences that don't make sense.
We'll take on board that we'll
Okay.
have, Tom's team have a final
Go through it, yeah.
Do you, okay, all right, okay.
If we have assurances that that'll happen.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely make that sure before it goes out.
Thank you. All those in favour? Carried. Yeah, we move to
Motion to move into confidence.
move into confidence.
I'll move that way.
Move that we move into confidence. This is a business plan for the Barossa Aquatic and Fitness Centre and also cost increases
door there, and you notice it's now quiet, but there've been people having noisy meetings out there, yeah, right there.
Yeah.
So I can understand how for the other 28, 29 days of the month, that's okay, but I think on council day, maybe that shouldn't happen. So while I'm on that point, can I also draw it to the attention, there have been times when we've had workshops where people have been vacuuming just outside the door. There are many times when they can vacuum, that's probably not the best time, particularly if we're recording these meetings and, you know, broadcasting the community. And maybe Councillor Miller's desk doesn't need to divide the council into two halves the way it currently is. If that was removed, we could move around. The noise would be having less impact because we'd be physically away from the door. So can I just pass all of that on, because seriously, some of the stuff that, like, particularly in the early part of today, when Councillor Haybick was speaking, I literally was picking up maybe 3 out of every 4 words.
Okay,
And
fair
I think we
enough.
got the gist of it, but you know,
We'll look at the
seriously.
furniture, there might
Thank
need
you.
to be a little screen or something there, but.
Just if I could just not be there for that 2 hours, and then the rest of the time, not a problem. Yeah.
Okay, there is one other urgent matter that I need to put forward, and that's Councillor Troop is looking for a leave of absence. In interest, yep, thank you. Councillor Troop has asked for a leave of absence from the 21st of April to the 21st of May.
I'll move that one.
Moved Councillor Johnston, seconded Councillor De Vries, all in favour?
That was Wes Smith.
Carried.
I've got hair.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Smith, sorry.
Well, it's a
You
pretty
can go too.
distinguishing factor.
Well, sorry.
Careful, I might punch you.
Okay, with that,
I need to
Get councillor Troop back in.
Get the Will Smith thing, yeah. Turns out I've got a disability.
Mate.
okay, with that, that ends our agenda for this council meeting in April, so with that, I'll formally close the council meeting. And we do have a workshop with those workshop